Okay, so now that I have my original image on there and that bottom layer is locked, and now that I also have my outlines layer on but also locked, I'm going to have my shape tracing layer selected, and this is the layer I'm going to trace all of my shapes. So I'm going to zoom in to get started, and then I'm going to move over to the pen tool here. I can also press P on my keyboard to get that. Now what we need to do is go back to our properties. Now, before we start doing anything with the pen tool, we want to be sure that we have our fill turned off so we can see through it. And then we also want to be sure that our stroke is a obnoxious color so that it can stand out. Now, normally I would select red, and I think I'm still going to start off with red, even though I have some red here and then this entire midsection is red. I might, when I get to this section, change my stroke to something like green or something that would stand off and be high contrast. So what I'm going to do is actually, since I said green, let's go ahead and we'll start with green and see how starting with green on this one works. So now that I have a green stroke and no fill, I'm ready to start tracing my shapes. Now, it's super important, okay, and this is for anytime you trace any image, whether it be stained glass, windows, or an image of an anime, whatever it is, that you are tracing the chunks of color or the inside of the shape versus the line. Now, what I mean by that, if we zoom in here, notice how we have the shape of the color, which is this red here. And that's what we want to trace. We do not want to be tracing the lead or the metal line that is on the outside. We're going to trace that later, but we want to start off just by tracing our main chunks of color. Now, it's going to be pretty easy when we get to this section here because we have all these different bright colors. However, when we get to the middle here, this is where we really want to be cautious of tracing our shapes versus the lines. So notice how we have some lines that go in through here. We don't want to be tracing the lines. We want to be sure that we're tracing the giant block of the shape or the color. So wherever you start tracing, so we'll start here, for example, and wherever you end up seeing the outline of the shape is where you want to trace. And I'm going to do kind of a rough job here just so you can kind of see. Now, normally what I would think about doing is going straight through here. But like I said, we want to be tracing the inside shape. So notice how we get a line here. So we need to trace this chunk here as its own shape. So we have this shape here, which is the inside of just this portion of this graphic in the center of the stained glass. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and I'm going to trace this section here. And notice how I'm going on the inside of the line. I'm not tracing the line, but I'm tracing the inside of that red shape. Now, again, I'm doing this very quickly. I expect yours to be a little bit cleaner and a little more thoughtful. Now that I've traced that inside section, I'm ready to move on to this other side here. Now notice I'm tracing the inside of the shape. I'm not tracing the line. And so now if I were to fill these in, now if you want to fill these in, you have to use your selection tool. You'll select the shape that you want to fill, select your eyedropper tool, and then select the color you wish to fill it in. So I'm going to grab my selection tool, select the shape, and I'm clicking on the outside line. And then I'm going to select my eyedropper tool, select the color I wish, and then I'm going to grab my selection tool, select my line, grab my eyedropper tool, and then fill that with that color. So this is what I'm working with now. Notice how I'm still missing this space here. So if I go to my layers section, and if I click the eyeball on the original image, notice how it hides that background layer image. So that way I can kind of see what I'm doing. So notice how I'm still missing this chunk here. That's going to be its own shape later. And that's going to be a pretty big one that goes across the inside of this whole flag section. And then from there, what we'll do is we will add our outside lines here, but that'll be for the very, very end. And those will be the outline lines.